Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, and just as a quick heads up, this is not a budget deck, although I do think it should be fairly easy to find substitutes for those expensive cards. But before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers and every single click counts. And today's deck is going to be centered around Eriette of the Charmed Apple. For 1 colorless, 1 white and 1 black, it's a legendary creature, human warlock 2/4, with each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, and at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. So when this card was spoiled, I thought it looked really cool, and I still think it does. It has a lot of cool build-around potential, even though it is very narrow by only caring about auras. What I like about it mostly, though, is that it wants you to be playing negative auras for your opponents. We haven't really seen many commanders based around that kind of thing in the past, so I think it should be quite a unique kind of deck. Obviously, you're still going to have a lot of the typical cards that go in enchantment decks, because those are just too good to pass up on, but the fact that we're not playing green is going to limit us a little bit in that sense, so we're going to have to be thinking outside the box a little bit. Finally, I also think the last ability, which Strange People equal to the number of auras you control, is incredibly cool. So yeah, I think this is just a very cool commander that I'm looking forward to trying out. So without further ado, let's get started with the list. And we're starting with Archon of Sun's Grace. This is a staple in most enchantment decks because it can provide you with a board. It's particularly good in this deck because we do have some positive auras and we want to have bodies to be able to put them on, so this guarantees that we're going to always have a good supply of bodies. Next up we have Arden, Intrepid Archaeologist. This is a really cool one because it can just switch around auras at the beginning of combat on your turn. You don't even need to attack with it. Usually it's used in decks to Voltron your own creatures up, but in this deck we can actually switch our negative auras to a better target if one has appeared on the battlefield. That's a cool ability to have, and we can even switch multiple auras onto one thing if we really want to. Armored Skyhunter is a cool card that's going to provide us a little bit of card advantage. It doesn't need to connect, which is nice. Attacking alone will already allow you to find an aura in the top 6 cards of your library, and you should be almost always hitting with this unless you're very, very unlucky. Ashiok's Reaper is a really cool card. We don't have that many ways to actually sacrifice our auras ourselves, but they are naturally going to go to the graveyard quite a bit because creatures die, and particularly creatures that are enchanted are often going to want to be killed by our opponents because they might have negative effects on them. That means that Ashiok's Reaper should be drawing us quite a few cards. Blightcaster is a super strong card in this deck. Every time we cast an enchantment, we're going to be giving a creature -2/-2. That should help us control the board really well. Tanitha Compassion Paragon carries auras very well, but is also just a great way to reduce the cost of all of our auras. We have a lot of these kinds of effects in the deck. Doomwake Giant is very powerful against weenie strategies or tokens because it's very likely that we can play a couple of enchantments a turn, at which point we can often just wipe their board repeatedly. This is a kill on sight card against those decks. Eidolon of Countless Battles is one of the rare auras that is good on our own creatures. We can just bestow it on something, and then when the bestowed thing dies, this is still going to stick around, and it should be very big. It's a great way to protect ourselves against board wipes. Hateful Eidolon is another cool card that was intended originally to be used with negative auras as far as I know, and it fits perfectly in this deck. Obviously we're going to have a lot of enchanted creatures both on our opponent's side and on our own, so this is a very solid card. Heliod's Pilgrim is a great way to search up a specific aura that we might need at any given time. Heliod, God of the Sun, kind of synergizes with a lot of the things in the deck. Anything that's asking us to control enchantments or to make enchantments loves this card because you can repeatedly dump your mana to make enchantment creatures. I think having mana sinks is good in most commander decks, and giving vigilance to our stuff is actually quite good as well. Hero of Iroas is another. Hero of Iroas is basically there to be another way to make our auras cost 1 less. Killian Ink Duelist is going to effectively make all of our auras cost 2 less, so this is incredibly strong in the deck. And a 2/2 Menace lifelink carries auras itself very well. Core Spirit Dancer is going to draw so many cards with all the auras we're going to be playing, and again, it can carry auras very well itself too. Lurrus of the Dream Den should allow us to recycle a lot of our cards late on in the game. A lot of our important cards are actually very cheap, so we can replay them with this. Mesa Enchantress is a great way to draw cards in any enchantment deck. Neva, Stalked by Nightmares, provides us a nice little bit of recursion, and then when our enchantments die, she's going to get bigger and allow us to scry. That can be very good with all of the enchantments we're playing. Undo Spirit Dancer is a really powerful effect. We can only do it once per turn, but being able to copy an enchantment for free once per turn is probably good enough. Slumbering Keep Guard is a great card in this deck. It's just a 1/1 for 1, which doesn't seem that great, but scrying every time an enchantment comes into play is a really really strong effect in this deck, and late game we can just dump mana into this and make it really big. Spellbook Vendor is a great way to repeatedly get auras into play. They can only target our creatures, but that's still really good when you can do it over and over and over. SRAM Senior Artificer is a great card advantage engine in a deck with this many auras. Starfield Mystic is going to reduce the cost of all of our enchantments, which is great, and again, it's a card that synergizes with enchantments going into the graveyard. It's going to grow itself whenever that happens. Starnheim Corsa is yet another effect that's going to reduce all of our artifacts and enchantments. This is very good. Sun Titan is going to provide us some recursion, and it also has a little bit of combo potential with some of the enchantments in the deck. Transcendent Envoy is another effect that's going to reduce the cost of auras. Because of all of these effects, we are actually running fewer mana rocks than normal in this deck. And Underworld Coinsmith is going to gain us a lot of life over the course of the game. We do have quite a lot of lifelink effects, including our commander in this deck, which means that we're then going to be able to pay that 1 life later on and drain our opponents, which can actually be a legitimate way to finish the game if it's really late. Moving on to enchantments, we have all the glitters, which can make one of our creatures into an absolute monster. Angelic Destiny is really good in the deck because when the creature it enchants dies, we're going to get it back, which means it's a great way to trigger all of our aura effects over and over. Animate Dead is another really good aura that can actually bring back a creature from a graveyard. That's a very solid ability to have access to. Court of Ardenvale is going to provide us some nice recursion as long as we can maintain the monarchy. It shouldn't be too difficult to do that, I feel, in this deck, seeing as it's quite difficult for our opponents to attack us. Darksteel Mutation is a great one that just sits around and is going to repeatedly work with Eriette, seeing as the creature enchanted by it is unlikely to die. Deadman's Chest is a card I've always liked a lot. We do need the creature to die, but that's eventually going to happen, and when that does, we're going to get a huge amount of card advantage, hopefully. Ethereal Armor is another all the glitters effect. Ghoulish Impetus is very good, just like Angelic Destiny, because it's going to come back to our hand whenever the enchanted creature dies. Kaya's Ghost Form is one of the cards that we mentioned that works well with Sun Titan, but it's just a good way to also protect one of our permanents from death. Lord Skitter's Blessing should be drawing us quite a few cards because we have a lot of ways to enchant our own creatures, so at that point this just becomes a cheaper Phyrexian Arena that also comes with some value when it enters the battlefield. Martial Impetus is really good in this deck because the creature equipped will have to attack, and then it's going to pump all other creatures that aren't attacking us, which should be most of them, seeing as our opponents are unlikely to be able to attack us. Minions Return is a cool effect that we can put on any creature as it's about to die with flash, and then immediately get it back into play under our control. We can also just play it out at sorcery speed and wait for it to die naturally. Nurgle's Rot is another cool enchantment that comes back into hand after the enchanted creature dies, and it's also going to give us a little blocker for our trouble. Parasitic Impetus can gain us some life while scolding one of our opponent's creatures. Sage's Reverie is one of the best cards in the deck. It's an all the glitters kind of effect, but it's also going to draw us an absolute boatload of cards when it comes into play. Screams from Within is another aura that's going to recur itself when the creature dies. Shielded by Faith can give a creature indestructible, which is always kind of cool, and we can put it onto one of our opponent's creatures to just kind of make it sit there and be a really annoying creature for the other opponents to deal with because it can't attack us. And then if for whatever reason it ever becomes a problem, we can just move it on to the next creature that enters the battlefield. This is a really cool card. Sigil of the Empty Throne is a great way to finish the game. If we get it down early enough and start making a bunch of 4/4 flyers, we should be able to run away with that game. Songbird's Blessing gives us some card advantage and mana advantage. It's a very solid card. Sphere of Safety is a backup in case our opponents deal with Eriette. It just makes sure that we don't get absolutely destroyed by a removal spell on her. Spirit Link is basically going to force our opponents to gain us some life if they want to use their creature, otherwise it's effectively pacified. Pretty cool card. Spirit Loop is basically the same thing, but it can only go on our own creatures. However, it does have that nice recursive clause on it as well. Unholy Indenture is another great way to steal our opponent's creatures by putting it on one of their creatures, and then when it dies, we're going to get it under our control. Unquestioned Authority is a great one that we can put on our own creature to allow us to swing in for a lot of damage, but we can also curry some favor with our opponents by putting it on one of their creatures, since it likely can't attack us anyway. And Vampiric Link is basically the color shifted version of Spirit Link. Very solid card in the deck. For sorceries, we have Tethered that's going to recur all of our auras from the graveyard. Return Triumphant is a nice little bit of recursion that also gives us an aura stapled onto it. I think this is good with all of the small creatures in our deck. Rise to Glory is yet more recursion that can actually bring back an aura and a creature. This is a great 2-for-1. And Toxic Deluge is going to be very good in a deck where we're gaining this much life. For instance, we have Not Dead after all as protection that synergizes very well with our aura theme. And for artifacts, we're running Swiftfoot Boots as a good way to give our creatures hexproof but still allow us to put auras on them. For lands, we're running Arcane Lighthouse, which is going to make sure that we can still put our auras on those pesky hexproof creatures. Jukabog is going to allow us to deal with our opponent's graveyards. Detection Tower is basically another copy of Arcane Lighthouse. Hall of Heliod's Generosity is going to give us a little bit more recursion for our enchantments. Rogue's Passage can let us sneak in some wins out of nowhere by making a huge creature equipped with something like All That Glitters get through for lethal. And Vault to the Archangel is yet more annoying life gain for all of our creatures. So there you have it. That has been our Eriette of the Charmed Apple deck tech. What do you think about this one? Are you as excited to try it out as I am? Let me know in the comment section below if there's any cards you would add or any cards you would remove. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care. Woo!